tonight we have Joe Stranksy. And Joe is in Madison, Wisconsin. He has been collecting postcards since he was a kid, about 60 years ago. His father got him involved in. His father was a stamp collector and a postcard collector. And Joe also hosts a postcard show that's held in Milwaukee, either once or twice a year, depending on the year they do it. And our presentation tonight is going to be a little bit different than past ones. Joe's here with us, but the bulk of the presentation, we're going to actually play a video because he's done it before. And then he'll be here, and then at the end, he can talk and answer questions. It's a good presentation. The original presentation is long, like an hour and a half or a little.
Hour and 10 minutes.
Hour and 10 minutes. So what we're going to do, we're going to start this. It's on YouTube. We're going to start it in the middle and go to the end.
These were printed by Paul Finkenrath in Berlin, Germany. The artist was Bunnell, B-U-N-L, and you can see that the July 4th theme, the artist really went to town on Uncle Sam, and some nice artwork on July 4th cards. And again, a wide range of quality. Sometimes the July 4th cards and the other holidays as well. Some of the cards are just very generic, but it's not hard to seek out the better ones. Here's 4, and I think this is just a partial set, but I happened across these out of a collection that I purchased. And some nice themes, you know, Uncle Sam, the eagle, the shield, you know, maybe Lady Liberty, Liberty Bell, etc. Some fireworks. So, and this set, you can't see it here, but this is an embossed set. And a lot of those early holiday cards were nicely embossed, which kind of gives them a 3D effect and adds to these ones are embossed. I think so. Yeah, I recall that they are. Yeah. So that adds to the collectability, in my opinion. Here's some Halloween cards. That's a separate subject in itself, as any of these holidays can be. There are a lot of different ways to collect Halloween cards. An excellent book has been published, rather thorough, by some people in Minnesota. And I think it's still available. It's one of these books that you can buy and then they'll print a copy out for you. I happen to have one, and that's really a great book. It's a great guide for collecting Halloween cards. These are kind of just okay Halloween cards. Some of the really, there are some really expensive ones. Those might be the winch cards, where the artwork is just fabulous. There's nothing wrong with these. And I wanted to show these because the one is a jack-o'-lantern, there's a black cat, then we got a witch on a moon. So there's different ways to collect Halloween. You know, if you wanted, if a person wanted to collect witches, they could collect Halloween witches. That would narrow the scope of the collection. Might make it easier to collect in some ways. Thanksgiving cards. Here again are 2 winch cards. This is kind of a homecoming thing, maybe up in Alaska or something. Yeah, in fact, it says first Thanksgiving Day in Alaska. The other one is Gold Seekers, California. And this is another set, and I don't know how many are in this set, but this is just 2 of that particular set. Some more John Winch cards. Pretty sure these are Schmucker. And I think I have another one that shows the same image but different printing, where these 2, for instance, There's only a few colors in this one. There's like kind of a light salmon or a pink color and some gold and then some gray and green printing for the ink. But these are quite nice cards and they're subtle. They're embossed. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, we went to Christmas. Okay. I wanted to show another Thanksgiving one, but I didn't have time to show that. So let's go back to this other one. Imagine, if you will, the image on the left, and then forget about the one on the right. So if you were to take that image on the left, and then another card could be printed in multicolor. And some of the winches are that way, where these ones are just a few colors, but another one might have lots of red and blue. And I'm not sure why these were chosen to be printed with fewer colors, but that's kind of unusual for winch cards because they're usually more multicolored. Christmas cards, they're very popular. I'm going to include some Santa Clauses. There's lots of other things to collect with Christmas children or snowmen. But here, these are 2 winch cards, and the one on the left, you can see Santa Claus in an airplane, kind of an uncommon theme, red suited Santa. The one on the right, this one again is one of the ones that's like a booklet. The booklet is kind of in the shape of the plants and the bell. You can open up that booklet and you can write a message on the card underneath. Circa 1910 or so, somewhere in that time, divided backs. Now, another rather popular part of Christmas is hold to light Santa Clauses. I have one on the right. The card's damaged, but I want to show that there are such things as hold to light Santa Clauses. These are rare, or at least they're very expensive. And this is one that's out of my collection. I'm just happy to have that one because you will have a hard time finding hold to light Santa Clauses. And the one on the right is also hold to light. Hold that up to the light, the windows light up and the candles light up. And so an interesting, angel. Actually, I don't see a lot of angels on Christmas cards, but you see quite a few on Easter cards. So hold to light cards are one of the interesting things to collect. And here we have some more Santa Clauses. The one on the left is by HBG, which is, the name is Griggs. And the Griggs is the artist. And you can see a very Merry Christmas on the bottom. And that's very typical of the HBG cards, that style of writing. HBG covered a lot of different holidays and also cards that weren't holidays. They just have sayings on them. But the artwork's fairly interesting. Some of the paper quality, I think, on the HBG cards wasn't as good because sometimes we find the HBG cards tend to be defective. But they can be found that aren't defective. But I think the paper quality of the printing on those might have been a little bit lower. The center one, I think that's a Hungarian card. And here we have like a St. Nicholas or a Santa Claus, a tan suit, kind of a different kind of Santa Claus. There's really a lot of different portrayals of Santa Claus or St. Nicholas from the European Christmas cards. And on the right, we have an Ellen Clapsaddle signed card. Ellen Clapsaddle is a well-known American artist. I believe she's American anyhow. Did a lot of holidays, a lot of Valentines, a lot of holiday stuff. And here's one of her cards showing some couple of children at Christmas time. She had a lot of nice work too. Now I kind of want to switch gears again. So I hope you're getting a feel of the dating of the cards because that's part of the purpose of my talk. But let's get into transportation cards. And here we're going to have some real photo cards as well. A lot of people like collecting the transportation cards. Trains are very popular, planes, lighter than aircraft, automobiles, horse-drawn, carts, et cetera, ships. And also with the Zeppelins and the ships, the philatelic interest, collecting the postmarks, as some of those can be quite valuable and can be found. Sometimes the seller might not know the postmark is a good postmark. On the left here, we have the Parseval 1. This was a German airship. There was a series of 22 of these made. This was Parseval 1. I happen to know that because of the 1909 postmark. There was a prototype to Parseval, and I think I had read in one of my research things I was doing for the talk that the Parseval 1 was actually built in part out of the prototype, the one that came before Parseval 1. On the right, there's a French dirigible. It's kind of hard to make it out, but I wanted to include this one because it has an aviation meet postmark, Bethany Aviation, and I think that was 1909. Quite a variety of the lighter than air, and not all Zeppelins. These are obviously dirigibles, but these can be found in dealers' inventories without a lot of difficulty, and they're pretty interesting, I guess. Here's a couple of Zeppelin postcards. There's one of the early Zeppelins, not sure which one that is. I don't know if that can be seen. That's maybe ZR1. I'm not sure. Graf Zeppelin there at the lower right. That's a divided back postcard, as is the one underneath it. ILA, that's the International Luftschiffahrtausstellung, which is an aviation exposition. It was held in Frankfurt in 1909. So that's an example of poster art. It's another thing that can be collected for people who are collecting postcards. And that particular card, if you can find it with the associated postmark, is a kind of a rare, valuable postmark. But this particular example is unused. Now, here was something I ran across recently in my collection, was rather excited about. Real photo postcard of a young aviatrix, Blanche Scott. And this happened to be when she was out at the Oakland, San Francisco Aviation Meet, February 1912. Quite an added benefit with this one, has the airplane station cancellation with it. It's pretty expensive, or at least rare cancellation. And Blanche was an amazing woman. She was taught by Glenn Curtis, the only woman to have been taught to be an aviator by him. That was in 1910. She's accredited as being the first woman, first United States woman to pilot an airplane. It was kind of by accident. She was taxiing or something along a field and put the throttle into high gear, I guess, and did fly for a short while. But I was looking on the internet, and another source credited somebody else with being the first woman pilot in the United States, but I think Blanche actually wins that one. And she was a stunt pilot. She was known as the tomboy of the air. She did some pretty dangerous stuff. She also made quite a bit of money. I read that she was making up to $5,000 a week back then, which is pretty good, even today. Also, she was the first Glenn Martin woman test pilot. Martin, is known as part of the Martin Marietta and later Lockheed Company. And she was a test pilot for Glenn Martin. Another one of her interesting accomplishments is she was the first woman to drive across country from east to west in 1910. She did so in about 2 months and 1 week. She did so with a woman reporter, and that was back when there was 218 miles of paved roads in the United States. So that's quite a feat. So she's quite an amazing lady. Now, speaking of Glenn Curtis, I guess he had his airplane company at Hammondsport, New York, at the south end of Lake Keuka. He created the Jenny, and of course, famous for postal collectors, the inverted Jenny postage stamp. This is a picture, a real photo of one of his planes. This preceded the Jenny by several iterations. So this was one of his early airplanes taken at Hammondsport, New York. Lincoln Beachey on the right. Here's a real photograph of Lincoln Beachey. He was also a stunt aviator. He did some amazing stunts. I think he was known for having invented the free fall, flying up vertically until he ran out of gas, and then coming out of it and landing. And he did so, okay? And he did some other things too, like I think maybe he invented the inverted roll. Anyhow, he had some pretty amazing stunts that he invented. And but at the 1914 World's Fair, I guess that would be the Pan Pacific one in San Francisco, he made a little mistake, I guess, and plummeted into San Francisco Bay or the water near there. And they recovered him soon after, but he drowned. So I guess it's kind of dangerous being a stunt aviator. But anyhow, that's one of my postcards. I don't have much to say about these two, but they're important, at least because here we're getting into a time when commercial aviation is coming to the forefront. Here's the China Clipper at top. And the China Clipper cards can be found at postcard shows and stamp shows. This happens to be a real photo. A lot of mail was sent, of course, by the China Clippers. And then the one beneath it, that was a DC-6. And it was signed, I think that was signed by the pilot. I don't have a picture of the reverse of that one, but it was a first flight postcard. And I think it was, I think I recall either Chilean or Venezuelan stamps on that. And I kind of regret not having that one to show you because it has a colorful reverse, some multicolored postage stamps on it. And then another linen postcard of the China Clipper. Here again, this is a linen postcard from the 1930s or so. Letters there, I think it might be a 9A or something. That was produced by Kurt Teich, a well-known publisher of cards. And although I can't see those two, the number and the letter following it, that tells you the year that card was published. And for instance, if it says 9A, that would be 1939. 9 is for 9 and A is for the 1930s. And I can't see it from here because the image is too small. But that's how one way to date a postcard. It's Kurt Teich linen. And beneath it is a picture of an airport. And I like that one because you can see the props on the prop jets turning. And this is an example of a chrome postcard. I'm not going to show a lot of chrome postcards, but I wanted to show a few. And that's kind of an interesting chrome postcard. So I wanted to throw that one in to show that. Now here we'll have a couple of automobile cards. Both of these are kind of advertising cards. The first one on the left, a Buick Coupe, the model 21-46, checking in at Portland, left San Francisco January 7th at 4:22 p.m. and arrived in Portland January 8th at 9:38 p.m. So it's like a 29-hour drive from San Francisco to Portland. Pretty amazing feat back then. That was in the early 1920s, I guess 1921 maybe. 750 miles. So that could serve as an advertising, how what a great transformation was going on in the country at the time. And you can see the automobile, the Buick dealership in the back. And on the right, a much more modern one. I don't know cars that well. I would guess that might be from the late 1940s. That's a chrome postcard. And a lot of automobile advertising. These are fairly abundant today at shows, especially if they're from, let's say, the 1970s or so. This is a little bit earlier. So a lot of good material out there to be found with automobile advertising postcards. Moving on to trains. Railroads could use postcards as an advertising medium. These are both linen postcards. The one on the left, Chicago and Northwestern, Streamliner 400, somewhere in the vicinity here in the upper Midwest. And the one on the right, that was a Santa Fe railroad car interior. And that's kind of done in a Southwestern theme. That was the Super Chief. And that's a Fred Harvey postcard. That's another type of topic that people collect. Fred Harvey, of course, had a lot of places out west, or maybe they even, I think, in Illinois too. But going out west, a lot of Fred Harvey stops on the various train stops the way out west. So they used the beautiful scenery out west to advertise their company. A lot of Grand Canyon postcards, a lot of other stuff. And that's, I found that there are a lot of people collecting Fred Harvey. Another way to collect postcards. A very short amount of time is going to be spent on ship postcards. This is a huge field. You know, quite a bit of time could be spent on ship postcards. The one on the left here is an advertising postcard. It's an undivided back, perhaps it's even a Pioneer. American line, New York and Southampton. So it was going across the Atlantic. A smaller size than the 3.5 by 5.5. Maybe this one was 3.25 inches tall. And the one on the right, a steamship postcard on the East Coast of the United States. And it kind of shows, you know, wow, I could go on this nice, you know, cruise on a steamship. So that's, you know, a way to advertise their company. There's a lot of interest in Great Lakes steamships. A lot of people here in the Midwest are collecting the Great Lakes steamships, and there's quite a variety to be had. Now we're going to talk a little bit about real photo postcards. This is an area that I'm pretty active in, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm going to show you a book here. This is the Real Photo Postcard Guide. I don't think the Zoom meeting is going to get this, but it's a great volume, hardbound. It's by Robert Bogdan and Todd Wesselow of New York. They've done a great job studying real photo postcards. And one of the things I particularly like about their book is in the appendix. I think it's appendix number 2. You can look at the stamp box and how what it says on the back with a postcard and various things. And you can date the postcard to within a certain number of years. It's quite useful for people who collect real photo postcards. I implore you to get the book. You can get it for $30 to $35 on Amazon. It's really a great book. The appendix alone is worth having. So in the early 1900s, Eastman Kodak and a few other companies, and some of those were acquired by Eastman Kodak, produced a lot of photographic paper, and they had the sense to advertise postcards as a hobby for people, you know, to produce their own postcards. I don't know how to describe this, but they helped develop the real photo postcard hobby. Let's put it that way. Like I said, many of the brands of the different papers can be identified by the backs of the postcards or the stamp boxes. Velox was one of the real early ones, and they became acquired by Eastman Kodak. AZO, that's a Kodak brand. And Cruxo and Psycho are two more. Those are produced by different companies. Don't know if they still produce cards. I doubt it. And as I said, the stamp boxes can help date the age. They're real photo postcards are quite popular now. A lot of people collecting them. And as I recommended the book, it's a great book to have. A.J. Kingsbury of Anago, well-known photographer. One of his subjects was the Native Americans of northern Wisconsin. I happen to like his photography. He has some Native American nice poses, with snowshoes and doing things that they would be doing at that time, the way that they lived. You can see their wigwam in the background or their primitive housing. So he's got a lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff other than Native Americans, a lot of cities, like Anago, Wisconsin, for instance, and other cities in northern Wisconsin. Also, a lot of the early lodges up north in northern Wisconsin. I think I have another one coming up. Good photographer to collect, and you can usually see his name on the postcard. Now we're going to spend just a short amount of time on Wisconsin real photo postcards. I thought it would be fitting for the theme of the show to have a bunch of Wisconsin cards. 1908 Cassville, which is over on the Mississippi River in southwestern Wisconsin. An old ferry bringing across some horse-drawn carts, I guess. I don't know how that was powered. Maybe it was even powered by the horses. That's a pretty early one, 1908. Now the one on the right, I'd mentioned the stamp box. This one has an EKC stamp box. That's for Eastman Kodak Company. That dates it to the 1940s. And this one was at the Merrimack Ferry across the Wisconsin River. Still a really pretty interesting card because it shows how relatively primitive the ferries were even back in the 1940s. Now, we have to mention Colby. Colby is sometimes thought of as the postcard king of real photo postcards in Wisconsin. Prolific producer of postcards. He was also the photographer. Don't know if he hired other people as photographers, but he is known as the photographer. On the left, you can see the logo of his company, NPC, that's Northern Photo Company, Wausau, Wisconsin. And this is an example of one of the backs of his cards. Some of his other cards don't have that back, but that is definitely his. The image is of a school classroom. The one on the right is a picture in Wausau. But he did a lot of great stuff up in northern Wisconsin. And some stuff in southern Wisconsin. I think even in northern Illinois, he had some things don't know about other states. Here's a picture of his studio. This is not a postcard, but it's in the same format as a postcard, just doesn't have the postcard back. So I assume he probably sent this out as advertising or as a way to procure customers and also to advertise his store in Wausau. There's a stain on the right, unfortunately, but it's still a nice image of his shop. Moving around to different parts of the state, Beaver Dam Affair, saloon interior, John Walter and Company, brewery cases at the lower right. Maybe this was a saloon in Eau Claire. And at the left, Fifield up in northern Wisconsin, train depot with some people waiting at the station. Train depots are particularly popular, real photo collectible around the country. And then again, another Kingsbury photo, Long Lake Lodge at Phelps, an old log lodge in northern Wisconsin. Well, we have to talk about Milwaukee since we're at the Milkopex stamp show. And the first card at the left is really a nice example of what you can find in real photo postcards. You can see all the signs on this company and somebody at work, standing by the front door and the sacks of flour or whatever it is that they got there. Some signs about the state fair, a lot of great detail. And some of the people who made these photographic postcards really went to a lot of trouble to get the focus right. So there's a lot of credit due for the people who did the photographing. And on the right, we have a trolley of National Avenue trolley car. And it really helps if you have a trolley car real photo, if you can identify the city where it's from, because that will help establish how valuable it is. A really neat card on the left, the Ed Gronkowski Band. Just found this one recently in a collection of mine. A very interesting card, kind of like a neighborhood band, I guess. And on the right, a saloon interior, postmarked Milwaukee, 1915, probably from Milwaukee, not really sure, but likely. And then on the left, we have Milwaukee Welding Company, and probably a shopkeeper or maybe the welder's wife, maybe tended the shop. Pretty nice detail there. On the right, a picture of the Milwaukee Braves. Didn't have time to check if Hank Aaron is in there. It's another example of what you can find collecting postcards. Well, the one on the left is a repeat. Sorry, I didn't know I had two of those in there. I just wanted to show a leather postcard that's also of the Wells Building. Leather was a fairly common material used to make postcards. Sometimes these were stitched together to make pillows, to make pillowcases. And you can occasionally find these bunch of them stitched together, and they were big enough to cover a pillow. And people did that. And this also gives me the opportunity to tell you that other materials were used to make postcards. There's a number of aluminum postcards that had images printed on them. Wood was fairly common. Wood veneer. Some nice cards from Japan printed on wood veneer. Copper postcards, those you can find. I even have a copper card that's a solid copper plate and a penny soldered onto it. And that's a pretty neat one. Didn't get a chance to show that one, but very rather unusual. Now here's another couple of Milwaukee postcards to finish up Milwaukee. Mail service card. Here, this one again is from around 1910 or so. And then a linen card on the right. Both of these, I guess, are divided back, I think. I'm sure the one on the right is Milwaukee County Stadium. That one was quite a while ago. And I also have one around the 1910 era of a Milwaukee baseball park. I didn't have, but I'm unable to show it today. Now, another topic that we can talk about is people collecting topical real photos. And that could be just about anything. But I happened to show these two. This was a couple of guys that decided to go over Niagara Falls. And the guy on the left, Bobby Leach, he survived the trip but had some serious damage done to him, but he did survive. And then the one on the right, somebody named Strathakis or Strathakis, 1930. It was a fatal attempt. And the guy that you see in the picture was somebody named Red Hill, I think. He was a well-known Niagara River boatman that plied the area beneath the falls. And he was known as being somebody who could really get around because I think he was maybe even involved in helping Bobby Leach get out. But there was some reference on the internet about his being a well-known riverman. And the caption on the photo shows that the only thing that survived in the barrel was a turtle. So much for that. Another topical real photo, tin workers. There are a lot of interesting occupations that you can come across on real photos. Again, people who collect them probably prefer them if they're identified, maybe not. On the right, we have the Kodak girls, and this gets back to the point that I was telling you about before, about Kodak company had the prescience to, promote amateurs producing their own photographs. And particularly, they did target women because I guess they figured women maybe had the time to do it for whatever reason. Here's a picture of two Kodak girls taking pictures somewhere. That's an important part of collecting. A very short amount of time is going to be spent on worldwide postcards before we finish up the talk. Here we have a China postcard before the Universal Postal Union. Various post offices, like Germany and United States and Great Britain, they would have post offices in other countries. And here's an example of a Chinese postcard, but the stamp is like a German stamp, overprinted China. And so you can find these, a lot of different variations here. And this also is an example of the TCV. It's French. I can't pronounce it, but anyhow, it means stamp on the front. And it was kind of a fad, I guess. But there's a lot of interesting ones out there that have the TCV, the stamp on the front. And on the right, this one's kind of unusual. This is an expedition postcard. There aren't too many of these, and this is not a postage stamp. It's kind of like a private label. But an expedition team was out researching or exploring this vast glacial field. I guess it's one of the biggest ones in the world in Pakistan. And then the postcard was then taken by a person, and the runner ran something like 80 or 90 miles to the nearest post office. That's what it says on the back of the card. And then it got posted, and this particular one was sent to India. So that's rather unusual. And another one, this is kind of interesting. See this once in a while. Back in the day when Germany and Russia and Austro-Hungary shared a common border, that would be Poland today for Austro-Hungary. Somebody got the idea of getting stamps from each of these three countries and posting them from the three different post offices. And it looks like maybe it was sent to Germany as well. Just kind of an unusual, colorful thing to do with postage stamps back then. Oh, and then a brief mention of worldwide exposition postcards. Well, you know that Germany made some great postcards in the 1890s. Not only did they do that, but they had a lot of expositions in the 1890s. And some of these were like in the 1897, 1896 era. I think this one's a 1896 maybe. Can't really see it right now. It's not a full color one, but there's a German exposition cancel on there. One of the horizontal lines says Ausstellung. That's German for exposition. These are not common, but I happen to like searching for them. And then the one on the lower left, that's the Universal Exposition in Paris, 1900. And on the right is a postmark of the exposition. I think that just about maybe wraps it up. Let's see if there's another one. Okay. Oh, I think this is the last slide. Another one of the 1900 Paris Exposition. This is another example of how high quality the printing got at that time. Just fabulous printing. And then another card that I like a lot, in 1908, the Great White Fleet from the United States ran around the world, visited Japan, and there was a commemorative postmark. And these are, I think, there's two variations, maybe more. One of them is Tokyo and one of them is Yokohama. That's the Great White Fleet cancellation in Japan. I think that wraps up my talk. Thank you for attending. I really appreciate being able to give the talk.
Any questions?
Yeah, could you just give like a quick summary of what would have been the introduction to that talk?
No, and I'd like to. So you'd almost have to watch it because it was prepared as an introduction to postcard collecting for the Milkopex stamp show in Milwaukee. So you could see I had a bias with Wisconsin cards there. And I actually started back in about 1869. And then I went through kind of the historical evolution of postcards up till the early 1900s. And then I talked about a lot of different things. So if you're interested, you can watch the YouTube video, and you can find it under Milkopex 23. And if you put introduction to postcard collecting, you should be able to find it. So it's hard to sum it up because it's almost like I tried to do too much. You know,
Okay.
it's too much to cover in one talk.
This was an introduction on all the postcard possible that you can collect. Are you familiar with Nodin, the French catalog maker, unfortunately passed now, who
Well,
made, yeah,
I have heard of that name. Yes.
okay. He suggested a basic collection, which means 200 about postcards. Then to make it, you have to collect one postcard on every theme, and he put together the 200 themes. I did it for modern postcards. It's kind of fun to try to find a postcard on every single theme, a different one.
Okay.
Joe, you said you started off in 1869. Do you have a Lippmann card in your collection?
No, that was from 1861, and my talk does mention that. That's one of the first things mentioned in my talk. I started out with a government postal card from 1869. I think actually mine was from the early 1870s, but I have never seen one of the Lippmann cards.
Yeah, I've never held one, but I've seen them at a distance. This is a nice broad selection that you brought out, and I just wanted to make some comments along the way. Very early on, you talked about the holiday cards, the Thanksgiving cards, and you showed two sets of Thanksgiving cards, I think. The one with the Alaskan figures, that's also attributed to Samuel Smucker.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Yeah.
Now, can I mention that we started in the middle of the talk, and if we had started about 3 minutes earlier, we would have started at the beginning of holidays. And I talked about Schmucker and Winch postcards, starting with New Year's, going on to Valentine's Day, etc. But we started at July 4th.
Middle of the year. Another thing that I wanted to point out, you mentioned Ellen Clapsaddle and put a caveat as to whether she was an American. She was American. I even had a customer years ago, he's since passed away, but his grandmother had a boarding house in New York City, up there where Michael Frank now lives. And one of the boarders was Ellen Clapsaddle, and he would come to visit his grandmother, and she drew a picture of him and signed it with her name. So we have evidence, real live evidence that she was an American.
Very good. I didn't know that.
Okay. Come to New York. We'll show you more friends and neighbors.
I'm hoping to do that. Actually, I like vacationing around the Finger Lakes.
Okay. Not so far from me.
I have the book with me about the real photo postcards. I'm gonna put it up here and see if maybe we can see it.
You know, Joe, Robert Bogdan used to belong to our club years ago. He was a professor at Syracuse University.
Right.
He belonged to our club then, but he moved to, it's either in New Hampshire or Vermont. I forget which one.
Vermont.
He's not a member now.
Yeah.
I haven't met him, but I've met Todd before.
Yeah. Todd passed away just less than a year ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Sadly, yes. Quite a collector and quite a lovely person.
Yeah, another good book, if you don't mind my pushing books, is this one by George and Dorothy Miller. Some of you are probably familiar with it. Picture postcards in the United States. This is the one where I learned about the Lippmann postcard. And overall, this is an excellent book. I don't think it's still being printed, but it can be obtained here and there.
Yeah. I agree with you. That was my first real book. I mean, I don't think there's any book that included more information than they did. And George's articles, George was the co-author with his then wife. His articles are being published on postcardhistory.net. So if anyone wants to see a little history in the works, that's a site to go to.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think the Miller book is strong for the research they did in the Library of Congress, because the early postcards were copyrighted.
Well, there sure is a lot of good information. I've owned the book for decades now, but I honestly have only, scratched the surface because there's so much information there. I can also tell you about my postcard show. It's outside of Milwaukee, and I didn't have any biographical information to offer. Well, anyhow, my next show is on April. I forget what it is. It's coming up in April, and I try to have it twice a year. But last year I could only get the room. It's really getting hard to get a room at a fair price. It's in New Berlin. I'm going to check my calendar here so you can know. It's the 21st. I have a postcard show outside of Milwaukee, and it's right after the Chicago area show, which is 2 days before that.
The 21st of what month?
April.
April.
Yeah. And then Jim Taylor of Missouri, he has the Chicago area show on the Friday and Saturday preceding that, the day before. So it's a 3-day weekend. So a lot of good postcarding to be done. So I really enjoy it. I've really had a blast, and I've made a lot of good friends. It's a great hobby.
Any more questions?
The obvious question: how did you start off in postcards?
Well, I started off as a stamp collector. I was pretty young. I was about 6. My dad was a stamp collector. And then I got fascinated with comic postcards at that young age. And then I actually got pretty serious about stamp collecting as a young teenager. And then it must have been about in the 1970s that I liked stamp collecting so much that I thought maybe I would, do it as a business. And then I got, there was a fellow in the Chicago area, John Simmons. He's a well-known Chicago guy. And he was a postcard dealer at the stamp shows. And then I learned a lot from him. And I just really enjoy postcards so much that in the 1980s, I think it must have been about 1986, I decided I had to do postcards a lot. So it's been very satisfying for me. Does that answer your question?
Topics you collect?
Yeah, I collect Alaska. I worked up in Alaska. I collect Alaska. I collect Hawaii. I collect Wisconsin, particularly. I like the northern Wisconsin lodges and stuff. And I collect worldwide postmarks. I'm a treasure hunter, so it's fun to, go through the 50-cent and dollar boxes and find, some interesting things. So it's been rather rewarding for me. It's a passion. It's probably a lifelong passion for me. I'm always trying to buy new collections and whatnot.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Joe, very much. I hope everybody enjoyed the way we did it tonight. It was it's a lot of work to redo the presentation, and we didn't want to have it go too long. But if you do go to YouTube, you can find it. The link is in the chat. Well, thank you very much. That was good. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody back at our meeting next month.